Actually, I think the blue behind you is better.
Yeah, and it's 4 o'clock. How many other guests are coming? Someone else is coming?
2 others. I don't know.
Well, we'll do it until 6. We can make it happen. If they come, they're going to be just so riveted to this exciting information. We have somebody in the control room that's absolutely famous for a case of pedophilia. So the topics that you're talking about, I think if people understood, tell me again, sin is...
Sexual sin.
Sexual sin.
Is salvation. Soul.
Is salvation. Gee, that's so deep.
This is what's in the Christian Testament.
20 seconds.
Okay.
This is camera 1, right?
Yeah.
Please don't move too much.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5.
Hi, this is Paula Gloria, and this show is called Farther Down the Rabbit Hole. Today we're really going to go far down the rabbit hole because we have a special guest, a guest who's been on my show before, and I've really enjoyed the topics. Today he's going to talk about his recent work that's based on many, many decades of work, and it's culminated in the phrase, sexual sin is the soul, is salvation's soul. So why don't we just start right from there? That's such a provocative topic for a rabbi to be saying sexual sin is salvation's soul.
See,
the soul of salvation.
Actually, you have, I came to the conclusion that the Bible intentionally misled us.
The Bible intentionally misled us. So who wrote the Bible?
When they finally edited it.
When they finally edited it. So you're of the belief that it wasn't just coming from God.
Well, it could come from God, but it was edited.
It was edited.
Somebody had to write it down.
So after it was edited.
And put it in. And you have contradictory messages in there. Because on one hand, you have this whole idea that, I'll put it, the rabbi said it, to God, the worst sin of all is sexual, to the point where it can never be forgiven.
Sexual sin can never be forgiven.
God will never forgive. When I read that, I was shattered.
But then why do so many people feel that it's through sex they feel more expanded and exalted?
This is what the rabbi...
And
sin.
Even...
We're talking about sin, not sex.
Oh, sexual sin.
You see, Shmuley wrote books called Kosher Sex.
Kosher sex?
See, he says do it with your wife to make it exciting. My book would be non-kosher sex. Non-kosher sex is the soul of salvation? That's right. And the Christians understood it. The Christians said, when there's an abundance of sin, there's an abundance of grace. You can't forgive somebody unless you sin. In fact, there are those who say the 613 commandments.
613 commandments?
According to the rabbis in the Jewish Bible.
Wow.
One of the commandments is to repent.
One of the commandments is to repent. Isn't
now,
that
how can you repent if you didn't sin? Which means you got to go sin first.
You mean you become arrogant?
No.
If you didn't sin.
Oh.
Oh.
Literally, you have to sin. According to the Christian Bible, it says, where there is a lot of sin, there's a lot of grace.
But isn't that Adam and Eve and all that original sin? Didn't they do one-stop shopping with the Christians at least?
Well,
I mean, that's how I was brought up.
You see, Matthew said... Matthew, who was here before?
Matthew Fox.
Fox. The Jews don't have original sin. The truth of the matter is they did. You see.
He said Jews don't have original sin, and you're saying they did.
You see,
the
rabbi said that the snake filled Eve with a poison. That poison went to all humans. And it was not until God gave the Torah to the Jews that it was antidoted. which means all other people still have that poison.
Uh-huh.
That's a pretty good version of original sin. But he doesn't know about that one. Okay.
Do you know in Ayurveda there's a whole science of treatment with poison? That's a whole other topic.
That's what homeopathy is, you see.
Yeah, right. Right.
Which is something that I lecture on. I call homeopathy quantum energy.
Right.
To explain what it is.
Hanuman was supposed to have gotten his inspiration from the Bible. A lot of doctors that do great healing have their heart broken. They're really saying, why so much suffering? And it seems from the show you did with Alan, you were talking about the sexual confusion of the day. Is that what's getting you to explore into your religion?
It's a carryover.
Carryover from what?
Well, according to paganism, it's sexual sin that keeps the world going.
So paganism said sexual sin keeps the world going round.
That's right. I mean, you know Tantra. You know about
Tantra?
Tantra. There's something called left-handed Tantra.
Right.
And right-handed Tantra. Nothing could get messier
than
dirtier.
Left-handed Tantra.
Left-handed Tantra. But they don't tell you the first 1,000 years of Tantra was left-handed Tantra. 1,000 years.
Let me just briefly say, you said that you know Sidney Schwartz. I don't know if you can come in on this, but this is Crossovers, the Origins of Homosexuality Revealed, and it's done by Sidney Schwartz. Now, what he's done is he has looked at many, many different versions of the Bible to justify mediumship.
That people become crossover because in another life they were the opposite.
And they had some trauma happen. But he also says that because of male souls being in female bodies, they had greater clairvoyance. And I only bring it up because you're talking about left-handed Tantra. He claimed that the Jewish tradition wasn't allowing priests to be close to dead people because if the bereaved relatives had asked for some clairvoyant message, they wouldn't be able to do it. So he was sort of saying it was a ruse that they separated. Now, even in India and even in the Vedas, there's a certain amount of uncleanliness in the family after a death, and even after a birth, actually. But it seems like these might be the envelope to different worlds. Now, Tantra, left-hand Tantra, to me means when you have people who maybe are not so accomplished in society, not so well born, and they go and they spend their lives in the cemeteries covered with ashes, but they're so fervent in their desire to know God that in these abysmal conditions that is shunned socially, they achieve a darshan. And that the idea is that when the souls are transitioning, that's when you're going to have the divine presence come down to take the soul from one body to another. And these dudes hanging around covered with ashes are kind of catching the scene. That's how I understand Agori or the left-handed path.
Okay.
That it goes out of social convention.
It gets worse, and I don't want to go into any more details.
In Tantra or Judaism?
In Tantra and in Judaism.
Okay.
In Tantra, they're talking about having sex with the dead.
Oh, yeah, right. That one. I never wrapped my head around that.
Moses.
So Judaism talks about that?
Moses is buried in a place called Baal Peor. Baal Peor was the ugliest kind of idol worship possible. Why is Moses buried there? You see. So the rabbi said, well, God picked that place before they sinned. Come on, God didn't know they were going to sin there. I mean, you see this game that they play. You see, the game is played. And I have dozens and dozens of different passages which obviously really deserve some attention. But my overall, I try to draw general conclusions. So what I'm saying is up until Jeremiah, the emphasis was on sin. The Messiah comes out of incest. Through David, back to Ruth, back to Lot with his daughter. And as I said, Moses himself was born, according to the Bible explicitly, but the only thing the Bible really tells you about his parents, his mother was his father's aunt.
Moses' mother
was his
father's aunt.
Which is against biblical laws of incest.
His father's aunt.
Wrap your head around that one. She had to be 120 years old, which makes Sarah look like a piker. You see.
Well, they also have the stories of people living hundreds of years. Do you think that's true or not?
Depends how you count, what your numbers are. But
it's a metaphor.
Where you take the Bible literally, where you don't, is a very important issue. Now, what I'm saying is that the key, let's talk about the Kabbalah for the moment, the so-called mystical Jewish tradition.
So-called? You don't believe it?
We could argue about that one. I could say different things about it. But the Judaism really has mysticism. But according to...
Of course, you encountered a great mystic, right? Krishnamurti?
That's another...
So you've had experience.
Another issue.
Right.
Yeah.
And you come out of the human... what is it? The human progressive movement?
Well, I have my own thing which I call transformational living.
Transformational what?
Living.
Transformational living.
That's what I'm into.
Okay.
Because the essence of Judaism, it really is transformation.
Right.
A transformation does not mean, like I saw some rabbi a week ago twisted. See, according to the Lubavitcher, most well known of the Hasidim, in his book, The Essence of Kabbalah, he says that the goal is for man to change. And it doesn't mean from bad to good, or unkind to kind. The important thing is to change, which makes no sense.
So you mean if you were good, you'd change to bad just for the heck of changing?
Bad in the sense of being cruel.
Cruel.
You see. The most important thing is to change. Now, there is, for example, a statement in the Talmud which says that a repentant is on a higher spiritual level than a man who never sinned.
A repentant is on... Well, I would imagine because he'd become conscious of what he'd done, just to be aware.
A man who never sinned? You take a guy who sins 100 years, commits every terrible crime. 1 minute he says, I'm sorry, and he really means it. He is now holier. Okay?
I think because he's been conscious, as a person who's never sinned...
It's more than just conscious, you see. It's psychophysical. His whole body changes.
Okay, great. So
his whole being changes.
Okay, now we're getting
That's the rise of the Kundalini.
Okay.
Which Jeremiah talks about.
Okay.
Because Jeremiah says, in the end, there'll be a new species, and in the new species, God will put the Torah on the heart. Nobody.
God will put the Torah
on the heart.
So it's kind of like what Plato said, that in the enlightened age, the laws would be written on the hearts of men.
Well, this is what Jeremiah says. This is Jeremiah saying. The point I'm saying is nobody, religious or secular, has had any clue what on the heart means.
Okay.
I say, if you look biologically, on the heart is a gland. The gland is the thymus gland.
Thymus gland.
The thymus triggers the opening of the Kundalini.
Right.
See, the Bible says we'll put it in the solar plexus, the inwards, and then on the heart.
Right.
Which is the way Kundalini
Yeah, my
works.
Understanding is the heart chakra is the most difficult to open, and once that's open,
then
the other ones
that's what
fall
Jeremiah is
into
talking
place.
about.
Right.
Okay. By the way, originally they didn't have 7 chakras in India.
In India?
Yeah.
How many?
They did not have 7.
How many?
Yeah, I think 5.
5. Okay.
Later,
I can live with that.
If they would have went to China, they never got the other 2. You see. The key here was, again, the thymus.
I studied with a master who said women have an extra chakra, the womb chakra, and doing a lot of spiritual practice, after thousands of mantras, I knew what it meant when it was like having another brain.
According
and
to
that's why Sidney
all
Schwartz...
these traditions, the women are the real possessors of the spiritual
But in
power.
the physical body, you need that womb chakra, and that's why Sidney Schwartz, I have to discuss with him, because it's not so simple as a female soul. No, a male soul being in a female...
Right.
No, a female soul being in a male body won't have, on the physical level, that extra chakra.
You see, now, I put the biology in there. The corpus callosum, the connection between the two sides of the brain, is bigger in a woman than in a man. But a left-handed man has a bigger corpus callosum than a right-handed man.
And were you saying in Alan's shows more Jews are left-handed?
They claim
20%
instead of 10%.
Uh-huh.
So the percentage is double. It's not 80%, but it's 20%, whereas the general population is like 10%.
Yeah.
I have a letter from an MD who says in 25 years of practice.
Is this Ashkenazi or Sephardic?
It's primarily Ashkenazi.
Ashkenazi.
Primarily.
It'd be interesting to look at Sephardic, and see if that's
what they did in a high school in Jerusalem, they tested the left-handedness.
Uh-huh.
They call it the left-hander syndrome. This is done before the intermarriage between the different groups.
Right.
This was done many years ago. It'd be very hard to do that test now.
Oh, because of all the intermarriage.
Because the marriages among Jews.
It seems sort of minor, though. I mean, what you were talking about, sexual sin being the soul of salvation.
Salvation's soul.
Salvation's soul.
I'm pushing it.
Salvation's soul.
Salvation.
And then you were talking about incest. And on Alan's show, he was talking about the pharaohs and so on. So you said the Messiah himself, you mean Jesus? Or you mean Moses?
Comes from David, who comes from Ruth, who comes from Moab, who comes from incest. And this woman who wrote the book in his image, who quotes mythology more than anybody else I've ever read, says, I don't have a clue of this enigma. Why is the Messiah, the most holy, comes out of the least holy?
Mm-hmm.
You see.
What's the answer? Why do you think this is the case? And we're not going to go out...
That's where the power is.
That's where the power is.
The power, paganism said, the principle of paganism is, the world does not exist without sexual sin, particularly incest. That's what gives the world power. Can you imagine that?
When you say a lot of these things coming from ancient traditions, having studied in different parts of the world, we have a certain cultural charge with words like sin and what's wrong and judgment, and maybe
that's
a lot has to be. That's what I'm trying to
defang, because this is used
defang the Bible
to control people. By looking at certain, you see, the Bible.
They stay so judgmental. They won't even go into the areas that could reveal great power and knowledge. Is that what you mean?
Well, you have ritual in the Bible, law against homosexuality.
Right.
And then I turn and I say, Moses and Joshua were involved in homosexuality on top of Mount Sinai.
Okay, be specific, physiologically specific. What homosexual act was necessary for
It was between the legs. The Greeks did not allow men to penetrate other men.
The Greeks didn't allow that?
No.
I thought what did they allow? I thought that's what the whole thing was.
No, it was between the legs. They did not. It was a disgrace to allow men to go into you.
You mean they ejaculated just outside? Is that what you're saying?
Between the legs.
Is that what that means? You have to tell me. I don't know what that means.
That's what it means.
That's what it means.
They would not. See, that's how they trained the soldier. Took a young guy, a youth, connected him to a senior citizen, and that's how he was trained. And according to Plato, that's how you got to enlightenment.
According to Plato? But what is that? I mean, I know with the womb chakra, the connection of the penis and the vagina, but I'm struggling to understand what's the initiation.
You see, this is why I said a pharaoh in Egypt was enthroned. The ritual of making him pharaoh was for the high priest to ejaculate into him.
but not penetrate.
Yes, the Egyptians did it.
Oh, the Egyptians
Yes.
penetrated?
That's right.
So the penis went into the anus.
That's right.
That specifically happened.
That's right. And then they would masturbate the Pharaoh. Because the world was created, people were created when the god Amun ejaculated.
Mm-hmm.
That was really what was going on in Egypt, which they don't tell you in school.
Yeah, they didn't tell me that in school for sure.
You see, there's a lot of stuff.
Sex education
that was
takes
covered
on
up.
a new light.
You see, this is the shocking thing I've come across.
This is shocking, and where did you come across it?
It's spelled out. This is what I want to publish. I have got books, page number, exactly where it's spelled out.
You mean in the Torah?
No. By historians, people who researched it.
But where are their sources?
They give you their sources. These are leading
we'll
scholars.
Check into that. Leading scholars.
These are leading scholars who written this.
So how can it make?
And see, Passover was only men required to come. Now hold on to your chair. Passover was only men, because the Passover ritual, only for circumcised men, it was a homosexual dance.
A homosexual.
That's right.
I'm sorry.
This is called a chag.
Alan,
Chag in Hebrew, and it's Hajj. The Arabs did this.
So
This was the ancient religion.
So why was homosexuality banned if it seems to have been central?
That's where the reverse was, you see.
The reverse?
Yes.
What
That's where,
why?
supposedly,
I mean, what Sidney Schwartz says is because they can't keep up with the greater gifts of the homosexual priests because they have a female soul and a male body. But you're saying something different.
no, I'm saying the Bible, the more I study it, I find two Bibles contradicting each other. The storyline is very pro-sexual sin. Almost 99.9%. And the ritual law is the opposite. As I said, Moses himself was born against his own laws, against incest. When they put him in that thing in the water, Sargon, they did that to Sargon, the great leader of the Semitic people. That was trial by water to see if the gods would let him live. Moses' birth was suspect. Now,
he was not certain.
Well, there was someone who said he was. Moses' birth was suspect. Now,
he was not circumcised either, was he?
Well, there was someone who said he was born circumcised.
He was born circumcised?
See, that was the greatest. Now, I'll tell you something else about circumcision.
We've heard it all. You heard it on Rabbit Hole Central.
Let me tell you something you don't know. Circumcision changed. Originally, when they circumcised a man, the Jews did not cut off the whole foreskin. Supposedly on the pyramids, you see them circumcising priests. Supposedly, and I have never been able to find the pictures, they didn't cut off the whole foreskin. So later, when the Jews were involved with the Romans, and you could not get into the gymnasia without a foreskin, they stretched it. So the rabbi said, here, and the whole thing comes off.
Gee.
So the circumcision, the Brit Milah, now is very different from what it was in Abraham's time.
I heard that the foreskin is cut off because it's the most negative part of the body, so by cutting it off...
Negative?
Yeah.
It's the most sensitive.
I know.
It's the most pleasurable.
I know.
So why is it negative?
So what's your position on circumcision?
Well, there are a lot of problems with circumcision. Some people call it mutilation.
Mutilation.
There are many issues. Now,
from a tantric point of view of credit and debit,
yeah.
if you get rid of the foreskin, somebody owes you big time. Isn't that the idea of a deal? Because you're making a covenant, you're making a deal, and you're putting your earnest money on.
Circumcision has remained key even to Reformed Jews. Nobody's really been able to justify it. That was considered, you were Jewish only if you were circumcised.
My experience being around those rituals is the women are the ones that are really starting to question, and they're saying, is this right?
Absolutely.
But, you know, to kind of speak out against the kind of social momentum that's going on.
Well, this is why I'm going back into the Bible and saying there are two Bibles. You see, there is the Bible which talks about...
Oh my God, are you saying there's a Bible to control people and a Bible to liberate people? That's what you're saying?
That's the way it's been used.
That's so
It's the way it's been used. What?
That's so mean. It's arrogant to think, right, that common people need to be controlled and
you know,
kept
Isaiah,
weak. And
Isaiah, they were the great poets of the Bible, all right? You look at Isaiah 6. God tells Isaiah, go and talk to the people, but don't let them understand what you're saying. You hear this?
What's that?
Talk to them, they shouldn't understand, because I want to destroy you. So Isaiah says, how far? Until there's only 10% left. Then I'll let them understand.
Until there's only 10%
of the Jews left.
You mean because of lack of knowledge, you bring the population down to 10%, and then you cut loose?
God brought the plagues.
Wow.
But it said Pharaoh was not allowed to change. He said, okay, I give up. God said, no, harden his heart. I need to beat him up more.
Yes.
I remember.
I remember. Maybe you turned me onto that idea a long time ago.
The same theme is over and over again. It's in Jeremiah. It's in Isaiah.
Right.
Was considered the great prophet of justice and law and peace. Come on.
So, Rabbi Al, we have 2 minutes left. Where is this going? You have this great mission, and
we are walking around with the Bible. People are gagged. People are handcuffed. People, their feet
are bound.
Okay? I have to break it open. The rabbi said, the seal of God is truth, even when it seems to contradict the Bible. I don't like doing this. It's not a pleasant thing. I've had to hit myself with the head with a hammer to be able to see these things. I have to live with them.
No, but you look really bright and energetic. I haven't seen you for maybe over a year, and whatever you're doing.
Well, this energizes me.
It's energizing because it's truth, right?
Well, yes.
Right.
See, I developed something called value-centered therapy. Value-centered therapy. You know what the opposites are? Truth and honesty. The opposites.
Truth and honesty is opposite.
Isn't that wild?
Why?
Because that's what it is. You see, it would take me hours to explain that. I use kinesiology, muscle testing.
Okay, well, I will look into it more because I'm going to post this on YouTube so I can get some comments from viewers and we can develop this.
I taught at the new school, of course, called a value-centered critique of modern psychotherapy.
Value-centered critique of modern psychotherapy.
1970.
I'm definitely going to talk to you more about this because...
1970.
In 1970, yeah. Well, that's great.
So it's been a long haul.
Okay, well,
and I say it's time to get it out.
It's time to get it out. So I've been joined today by Rabbi Al Bobroff, who has a great mission to defang the Bible, to release people.
Defang the people who are using the Bible.
Defang the people who are
using the Bible to abuse people.
Oh, to defang the abusers who are justifying their abuse with the Bible.
That's right.
It's a wonderful mission. So thank you very much for joining me, Rabbi Bobroff. And I'm definitely going to, I took notes.
What I've done, I have what I call the unauthorized autobiography. My unauthorized autobiography is called Confessions of a Rabbinical Heretic.
Confessions of Rabbinical Heretic, the unauthorized
version of my
autobiography. I've never heard of an unauthorized autobiography, but hey, you heard it here. So thank you for joining me. My name is Paula Gloria, and this has been an excursion farther down the rabbit hole.
Amen and A women.
Amen and A women.
A women.
Yeah, this was fun.
This is the course description.
Okay.
1970.
Value